My name is Christos Papachristou. You don't have to remember that. It's written over there. I'm the principal landscape architect in a company called JBA. And JBA has also a branch in Romania. And I've got one of my colleagues, thankfully, over here. Bogdan, he's over there. Unfortunately, for now, there is no landscape architecture in the company, but it's early days, we'll see. I'm a horticulturalist, agriculturalist, but I also wear the hat of the landscape architect. I studied in Sheffield, and will talk under the people who taught me in Sheffield. You might know some of them. They're important. Essentially, we are going to talk about wildflower meadows. What is a wildflower meadow? We'll find further down. But at the end of this presentation, hopefully, you will be able to use these wildflower meadows. You will feel more confident in using wildflower meadows. You'll be able to advise more confidently your clients about wildflower meadows, and also tell them what might go wrong, what might go right, so that you essentially manage the expectations of your clients, which are quite important, as we've discussed, what they expect and what they don't. But above all, it's about feeling inspired, hopefully, to take the wildflower meadows further on. Now, what is a wildflower meadow? This picture might sound familiar. We're having a discussion. Is it Transylvania? Is it not Transylvania? It's Central Europe. So this is a wildflower meadow, but what makes it a wildflower meadow? Anyone knows? No?
No, the name of the species.
Herbaceous perennials, correct. Any idea how many species might be per square meter? 150, potentially more. So it's a very, very dynamic community of very, very dense. So these little have the sun and they sort of compete with each other. It's a balanced, dynamic community. But the thing that makes it a wildflower meadow different is that it's cut. If you don't cut it, it eventually into a woodland. Apologies, Alex. We don't want that. So the little trees will start growing slowly but steadily, and eventually will evolve into a woodland. The component of flower meadows is cutting. How frequently? Sheep are grazing these areas, so they keep it, possibly they cut it every year. In Australia, they've come up with an even more economic way of managing wildflower meadows in large areas, and they might cut it once every 5 years, for example. So it's something to feel inspired again, suit it to your conditions, and play with. Because it's all a game, eventually. So that's a really nice, colorful, you see like pinks, greens, all these things. Central European sort of meadow, potential Transylvania, we don't know. That's a wildflower meadow in the UK, with more native species plants to the UK. That's in Liverpool. We like Liverpool. But why? What makes us want those wildflower meadows? Okay, so in a landscape world, the original inspiration came from these sort of bedding plants. So what do you think of these? Down? Why? Do you know? Do we like them? We do like them. It's color. Like it's structure. So every year you have to go there, plant like your, yeah, of course. But this is traditional. This has been done for centuries in France, in England, whatever. So people know this and are used to doing this. Okay. But these offer nothing to pollinators. I don't know about yourselves. Have you ever seen bees flying around your little primulas? Because I haven't. This is like your common Apis mellifera bee. Gauging, you know, the tongue is out. It's very tasty, that geranium pratense over there, so we love it. And these are some bumblebees just trying to fight their way around the stamens of Phacelia tanacetifolia. It's like a plant. We love it again. It's amazing for bees. Annual. And if we had an ecologist amongst us, they would tell us everything about the floral units and how different it is for a bee to fly from one flower to the other or to walk to it. That's something to consider as an inspiration, again, later on. But yeah, we are used to doing that. Sorry, I'll show this picture again and again eventually so that it gets the negative connotation it should have. What this cannot do is have that interaction with generations. I don't know how many of you grew in Bucharest and how many meadows Bucharest got. I grew up in a small village, in a small island in Greece, and we do have some of our wildflower meadows anyway. And just being there, being able to pick it up and, you know, create something with your hands, offer it to your mother, essentially. It creates memories, which is kind of important. Yeah, they destroyed it, they are children. Things are to be destroyed, it's inevitable, but what is life if you don't destroy a few things like that? You cannot do that with these plants. I mean, try, and we'll see what will happen, how many people will chase you. But it's for all generations. I mean, these guys over there, they would love the bedding plants, but this is a photography group of young in heart people in Sheffield. So they are young in heart, yes, and they would take their cameras and they go closer to the wildflower meadows. They would see Daucus carota, for example, or other flowers. Oh, look at these strains, and it's interesting. It's something interesting, even for someone that's seen loads of things in their lives. That thing cannot do that. You take a picture of it once and it's done. Like, I don't know whether that's clear. And that could definitely be me, like running with my bike through grasses and what have you, destroying again everything. But if you've got a plant community that's got 150 plants within a square meter, you kill one, you don't kill it, you trample it, you stop it for a little bit. The one next door will grow. So it's taking care of itself in a way, okay. It might not look too good when you are close by and you look at just this section, but if you step back, as a picture, yeah, it's nice, it's still there. So good so far? Yeah. Feeling maybe slightly? Go on? No. Oh, okay, thumbs up. Kill. No. The fun is over. So, no, it's not over. This is just a slide you'll have on your PDFs of some terms that we went through with Cosmin, because they are more technical and specific to the wildflower meadows. Unfortunately, they're in English. I apologize, I don't do Romanian. Thankfully, I've not learned the swear words yet. But, yeah. You will hear me talking about rotovation, for example, which is like cultivating the earth, or tractor-mounted equipment, or spraying off with a herbicide weeds and vegetation. If at any point the words I use, my accent, or something doesn't make sense, please stop me. Christos, what on earth are you talking about? And I don't know, just repeat what I said, you know. So far, so good? Yeah. Good. I'll be focusing on urban wildflower meadows. The reason why I'm emphasizing on the word urban is because there are legislation, there are laws that protect native habitats. And you cannot plant non-native, potentially invasive, these are not invasive, plants in locations that are protected no matter how beautiful they are. Okay. And no matter how harmless they might be. Okay. Wildflower meadows, urban wildflower meadows became quite popular in the UK, because of the Olympics, thanks to two guys that I'm going to mention later on, the ones that you might already know. And this scheme, the River of Flowers in Rotherham. Rotherham is not the kind of place you would know for touristic reasons. Even the locals wouldn't go there. But it's because of that this project made such a difference, that really poorly looked after space in a public location, that the locals started realizing, actually, we can do something different to grass that will look nice. Now we know that will have benefits to the native wildlife, so why not? And it makes us happy. So this is about 8 kilometers of wildflower meadows. So people get stuck in traffic, and while getting stuck in traffic, instead of swearing to the other drivers first, they just look at the flowers and then they swear. Okay, like you can't avoid that. It's like happens. I actually had a friend with whom we're playing in a band, and she didn't know, of course, what I was doing. Who knows what a landscape architect is? And when I told her that, yeah, I work for the company that did this, like, she hated me after that, but it's okay. At least for a moment, she liked me. So that's one mix in, I'll indicatively say June, okay? If we look at the same mix in August, for example, it would look like that. So these urban wildflower mixes last, their magic is that they last for 5-6 months of continuous flowering, okay? And that's only achieved, unfortunately or fortunately, we've done it with species that are not from Europe. Like North American species, in perennial mixes you might get species from South Africa, for example. From Asia, yeah, but not as widely, anyway. But the main ones that we have been using is those mixes. They are coming from North America. And they are your agricultural weeds, like poppy. Poppy in Europe, if you go speak to any farmer, it's a weed. Coreopsis tinctoria, this little flower over here, which is magical if you look at it in masses and there is the wind and, you know, blows them. It's from North America and it's their poppy, their weed, essentially, okay? So far, so good? Yeah? We're not falling asleep because of that really nice chicken, eh? Yeah. But these are annuals. So that means that their cycle gets completed within a year. If we cut these meadows before they set seed, before they produce seeds, they will not come back up. So you are done with it. Then you've got bare soil. Okay? But if you let them produce seed, maybe you will get something nice for another year. Different balance, because different plants produce different quantities of seed. So it's not going to be the original designed mix that the company that has done this survey that we'll talk about works with. These are perennial mixes. So these are kind of harder to implement, and this is what we're going to talk about mainly, because they're more sustainable. Yeah. But they last for years. Their dynamics change again, but they change more slowly. And this is what I would like you to maybe have a little, better understanding, to not be afraid to experiment. Okay. And once they became known, everybody wanted them. So this is in Newcastle. in parks and something for any landscape managers in our midst, in our company. Because they can grow up to 60 centimeters, that would be a designed height. If you put them right next to the footpath, they'll start like trampling and falling over the footpath. And it doesn't look good, okay? So a quick technique is like you get the mower, 60 centimeters of width, you just run along it. And you see that really neat edge. It's a nice feel, like as a human, you like saying that, okay, this is looked after, it's clean, it's mine. So it's like psychological. Other parks where that's been used, this is a park in Sheffield, that's where I used to work. And they use those meadows, perennial meadows, for SUDs, sustainable drainage systems as well, to manage water on site, treat it. Very good area of interest if you want to get involved, especially with JBA. Advertisement there. More SUD schemes. These are from the Olympic Park in 2012. Some of these photos will be very old. Not as old as me, but kind of old. So these are from the Olympic Park in 2012, when everything was looking fantastic, you know. Very ornamental, like it's all like very flashy and for show, pretty much. While that's Manor Fields Park in Sheffield again, and it's more naturalistic, more organic. It all goes down to what the location is, what your audience, as in the people that are going to see these plantings are, and what the function of the space is. So these plants would be better for holding a little bit of water and drinking it slightly better. You know. So far so good? Yes, thank you. I'll be looking at you, Katie. You can use them on green roofs, of course. Different mixes, different species, similar species to your experiment, the wall. They are like green roof species, Dianthus deltoides and the other ones. And this photo over here, this is a unique location. It's a Sharrow Vale School in Sheffield, again, telling you about Sheffield. And it's the first local nature reserve. That's an official legal designation. Yeah, like a reserve protected kind of area. Human-made on a green roof. So what happened is species from around the area got blew onto the green roof, and they realized that the community was, you know, mixed of native, non-natives, but the natives were the ones that they wanted to see, and it's now protected. So, yeah. And another wildflower meadow, like if you really want to push it, is a mowable wildflower meadow, where you essentially use species that can either flower at a very low height, or can grow, for example, Achillea millefolium. If it falls, it can turn back up and flower, and it doesn't mind if the mower goes over it, so it's still there, kind of situation. Different types of meadows, like you can see how people might get creative with these things. What do I have? What can I play with? Right, but what are the main objections? Of course, it's not all flowery and nice. I remember I was in London on a tractor, funny story, of course you do, and a part of the maintenance of perennial wildflower meadows is on the first year, when it's starting to look nice, you go over it with a mower and you cut it, and you leave nothing. So there was this lady that got so angry on me, like, you're destroying nature. I'm like, no, I'm trying to, like, I'm improving it. This is helping it. Like, why don't you let nature do its thing? And I realized it would be such a conversation to tell her that that's not nature love, this is something that actually we did. And if you want to let nature go, in England, where you've got all your industrial soils, heavily polluted, monoculture, how do you get? You'll get something like that. So don't get me wrong, I am in favor of letting nature go where we've not destroyed it before that, or where there is the potential, essentially, to self-heal. So, yeah, let nature go. Then there are the ecologists who will say, oh, you're bringing non-native species, exotic species. How are our native pollinators going to get their pollen, nectar, what they want? It's not wrong. If you go to get like orchids from wherever, or weirdly shaped flowers from whatever country, okay, you're not helping much. The reason though this picture is pissing ecologists off, and apologies to any ecologists in our midst, that's a native to the UK species, Silene dioica. Oh. That's far too clever, that. Keep your hands like it. That's Silene dioica, that flower. And that's your native bumblebee. So what this bumblebee is doing with its back turned on us, it's drilling a hole at the back of the flower, and it's robbing nectar. Robbing, so it doesn't complete the pollination. It just goes at the back, having a sip, and goes. It's kind of common. This is a fuchsia, as you may know. You see that's gap, so they go like a little opening, they have a little drink, and they go. That's robbing. So it's not ideal, yes. Most of the flowers have the shape for native pollinators, but it's something to keep in mind that yes, we need to consider that. But this happens too, so it's balancing things out. It's not black or white, there is gray. And the other thing, I'll stick with this slide because the next one is getting too complicated, is genomics. So if we start sowing wildflower meadows with seeds that come from a specific region of the earth, how is that going to affect the genetics of the native population of the same species? Does it make sense? We see. So there needs to be a balance. That's why I'm saying strictly urban wildflower meadows, because at least in an urban environment it's harder to find those populations of species that are kind of threatened. Right. So far so good, because we are going to jump into like some deeper waters now. Thank you. This side, thank you. So there is a lot of research, thankfully, being done on wildflower meadows, more and more. Thankfully, in different parts of the world, they are repeating the same sort of things, but I'd like to stick to these 3 research projects that were done by proper academics. The first one, hopefully the links will work, but this should be on the PDF. Because I know this one might, I touched it again, okay. This one might not work because they removed it from the website. I tried to find it and it was hard, but thankfully the youngest generation will be more capable than myself. So the first one was, there were guys that were measuring with micropipettes how much nectar each flower has, native and non-native, all sorts, okay. Fun fact, your dandelion is Taraxacum officinale, rings a bell? Yeah? The best for pollen, like amazing plant, really boosts pollen. The second best is Escholzia californica, which, as the name might mean, is not the native one, it's from California. And it's not invasive. And it's beautiful. So if we want to boost what we offer to pollinators, why not consider Eschscholzia californica? And these words are not mine. These are the words that came out of the mouths of ecologists when they were presenting those findings. And it was partially satisfying to hear, but anyway. It's because they wouldn't admit it before. The second project, Urban Pollinators Project, took 4 years, and there were groups of students eventually that would go into big cities in the UK, Reading, Leeds, Edinburgh, and I think Birmingham, the other one is. And they would measure within sections of road verge, like alongside the road, of parks, of back gardens, where would be the most bees and what flowers they would meet, how much nectar, pollen, blah, blah, blah would be in there. Similar results to the first research project. Non-natives came up quite high. And the third project has to do with what we've touched about human psychology and human perspective. So, you know that neat verge along the footpath that we saw with the wildflowers? That's pleasing to the humans. If plants were taller and that would obstruct their visibility, humans would feel kind of, insecure, agitated. Oh, what's going on? Is someone going to attack me? So they were investigating this kind of balance of just grass, few flowers, taller flowers. How is this perceived by humans? Psychological mainly. It's a good reference. So these things to have at the back of our minds when we decide what kind of planting we're going to put, what colors or how tall a species will grow, or where. But the most of this talk, because this is just the introduction, it's going to be about this research project that we did in Sheffield, and has to do with the way that we can control the variables that affect the establishment of wildflower meadows from seed. Was that too much? Shall I say that again? Perennial wildflower meadows. Apologies. Okay. We did a few other things, but that ties in with the other scientific projects on quantifying the nectar and pollen in plants. We tried wildflower meadows in the Mediterranean, in Greece and Spain. We'll see the two guys that we work with. But I've been telling you about two professors, and these are the professors. It's Professor James Hitchmo, he's now retired, and Nigel Dunnett. They are the two that essentially made wildflower meadows more known. Nigel Dunnett owns essentially part of pictorial meadows, and James Hitchmo is the guy that really pushed for perennial design of seeds, and he's actually publicized everything now. I've got his book further down. It's the next slide on. Sowing Beauty, that's his book, 2017 I think it is. Shall we take a quick break here? How are you feeling? Huh? Or shall we carry on and maybe, yeah? I'll have a yeah. So, designed wildflower meadows we are talking about, right? How do we design it? A rough guide to design it would be to have few things sticking up here and there, like your tall elements. And by tall in a wildflower meadow context is like 1.2 kind of centimeters. You can go taller, you can go shorter, it all depends. And you want few of them because you just want them to just pop up here and there and create a pattern so that it's visually engaging, going back to that research about what's interesting and what's not. Then you've got your core, your main layer. This is where fun happens. This is where you are creative. Oh, I'd like a little bit of pink in April or a little bit of purple in August kind of situation. But it sort of stays within the 60 kind of centimeter height. Okay, you want it to be there. And then you get your fillers, like your plants that are very low, small. They don't mind being underneath other plants. They allow other plants to push through, but they don't leave any ground exposed. Why would we not want any ground being exposed? Because of the winds. Thank you very much. That's the answer. Because then we'll have to go and do weeding, and depending on the weed, it might take over eventually, so it destroys whatever you've done. How many plants? Indicatively 15 plants per square meter if you were to design it and plant them as potted plants. So this is the target, roughly, okay? Because when we design wildflower meadows from seed, we might start from 200 plants per square meter, essentially, okay? Is this where, that's where I'm asking again whether we're going to take a break or not, but no, we'll continue, we'll carry on. So let's say we've got our wish list. We want a mix that is kind of coping with dry conditions. It's growing about yay tall, the tallest plant, Achillea filipendulina. We like these plants. They cope with our kind of drier conditions, with not fertile soil and what have you. How many plants do we put designed from the beginning from seed? Let's say Achillea filipendulina, cloth of gold, we only want 3 as a starting point. While Festuca longifolia, which is kind of standing there low, not really being obstructed, let's say 10, 3 times more. Linum perenne, the plant that I was really excited with, it's a linum down there, 40. Why 40? Because it's slim, it's again over there, just flowering, growing, doing nothing, offering the color, been welcoming the bees and what have you, and the rest of the plants can just grow around it, and it fills the soil. You know, it's a filler. It's a nice, and it's cheap. It's really cheap to buy as well as seed, not as plant. Verbascum olympicum, half a plant per square meter. We don't want to we might, because that might end up being 1 plant every 10 square meters. Okay, as we'll see. So this is how many plants we would ideally like to see growing per square meter. But we're talking about seeds, okay? And seeds come at different sizes, different shapes, different qualities, different everything. We need to take that into consideration. So in 1 gram of seed, for example, you get like a huge variance that needs to be taken into consideration if we want to come up with a mix. Huge difference over there. Inothera missouriensis, it's got like 220 seeds per gram, which means like it's a fairly big seed, okay. While Achillea filipendulina, you blow it and it's like dust, nothing over there. This species also, it's not like you plant 1 seed and it will grow. We cannot guarantee that. It might take a year to establish, it might not like it at all, so we get different establishment rates. And this is what James Hitchmo and Nigel Donnet have done. They have investigated these field establishment rates. But in the chamber, like when we grow them in a petri dish, all of them grow, because let's say they've got good quality seeds. They're on your slides. I don't know, I look better. And once you do this multiplication, division, blah, 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 you come up with how much quantity in weight you need to have of each species, considering how big the city is, considering how well it establishes in the field, to essentially achieve something that is closer to your design. Any ideas how accurate this is? Even if you pray hard, there is going to be definitely a variance, because seeds not only vary in size and the rest of it, depending on the year, how much sunshine the plants received, how much water, whether somebody kicked it, whether somebody chopped a leaf. It varies only slightly each time, but it varies. So you have to imagine wildflower meadows and seed mixes as something fluid that's got like a wheel of its own. It's a more liberal kind of way. And eventually we come with these quantities. That's in grams, and you see lots of decimals. So for practical reasons, we multiply this by 1,000 to make a kilo of the mix. That will look something like that. Okay. So you mix it, and here is your mix, essentially, of your wildflower mix to sow. A usual sowing rate, which is how many grams you would put per square meter in your planting schedule, like your table to calculate the quantity. For perennials, it's about 1.2 to 2.5, while annuals are slightly bigger, like 3 grams per square meter. And now what? You've got your seed mix. What do? You just around like throwing it here and there. I think this is where we take a break, because the next part is intense.
Maybe some questions?
Absolutely, always. You don't have to wait for me to say questions. If you've got a question, you just stop me.
How can we control the weed spreading? I understand that the meadow grows, I don't know, since March to April, but the weeds keep growing there. How do we manage that?
In a perennial wildflower meadow, in any meadow, you would ideally start with a sterile bed. Sterile, like with everything, nothing there. So that can be achieved either by spraying off the vegetation that you currently have. If you want to be very thorough, you will rotovate, wait for plants to grow again, spray them off, and then you can start. Another way of doing this would be to start with mulch, but we'll talk about it in the next part. It's like a cliffhanger. Game of Thrones style, yeah.
What's the best time to start with this?
To start the operations,
Yes, during the year. I mean, in the spring, in the winter.
the preparations themselves, as soon as possible, it doesn't matter, depends on how you are going to create your sterile conditions. If you want to spray off the vegetation, you need to have the vegetation. So it has to be done during the growing season. But if you decide to go down the path of the cliffhanger, that we're going to talk about, the cliffhanger is nothing. You use like a substrate, like you put something on top so that the plants underneath cannot really push through, or until they actually push through, the ones on top have grown and they don't allow sunlight eventually, you know. So that it depends on what machinery, what chemicals, what members of staff you've got in hand, and you work with them to see how you want to achieve this and what the best way would be. You might not have members of staff during the growing season, for example, and you might have to do something in the winter when it's not convenient for most of the plants, you know. Question?
Yeah, you said before that the most successful establishment species are North Americans.
The most successful in offering color later in the season, or the way you see it, later in the season. So most of the native species will flower usually up to August, September. If you want to push into October, November, if the winter is mild, maybe December, maybe not in Romania, but the mild winters of the UK, Coreopsis tinctoria, Cosmos bipinnatus are two of the species that will grow happily until that time, but they are both North American species. It's the season rather than how successfully they establish.
My question is actually we should prioritize biodiversity rather than how endemic is our species, how native are. We should make it first useful for pollinators, and after that, if we can introduce some native species, that would help.
You've got a point that has been very hard to grasp for people in the UK. Because now you might have heard of the decline of pollinators. If we've decimated, if we like completely destroyed the pollinators, we need to give them everything. Like every second that they ask for something, we should be able to provide. And you're right to think that, yes, if a non-native species fills that little bit of a gap in resources that a native pollinator might need it, yes, we should prioritize using the non-native. Again, non-invasive, that is offering the resources to the form that we want. And then we can, move back to the natives. Yeah, I agree 100%. This was the meaning behind those research projects.
Are there any invasive species you specifically don't recommend? Let's say, not ambrosia, everybody wants ambrosia.
Thankfully, what I've noticed out of, oh, sorry, not for me? Oh. All right. So thankfully, I haven't noticed any species out of the ones that I'm mentioning here and work with. The only thing that has sort of drawn my attention, I'm thinking, okay, let's see how you are going to behave. Escholzia californica is supposedly an annual plant, okay? But it's an annual plant in the States. The way I've seen it behave in the UK, at least biennial. So I've seen it survive in the winter and the same plant growing again. Not invasive as such, but there is a difference in the behavior that we don't know. So it's definitely worth being careful when we do these sort of things. So, and observe and, be very careful to start with.
Annual plants, as you said, in their native environments can manifest perennial.
Or in a different environment, yeah. So I haven't, to answer your question, I haven't noticed one, and I thankfully, or unfortunately I cannot protect you from any plants, but be aware of that, yeah.
Talking about non-recommended species, I just spotted on your list that you have Inothera odorata.
Inothera odorata.
Yeah, which is gradually more popular in Romania too because it's very pretty and pink and a happy flower. But I was wondering if you consider this controversy about it being actually a very lethal trap for Macroglossum stellatarum, which is a very nice pollinator. It's also called a hawk moth, and it's a lethal trap for it.
Is it the Inothera odorata or the Inothera speciosa?
No, odorata.
I'm not familiar with that, so I'd be interesting to, I'm afraid I cannot really give you an opinion on that. I know that Inothera speciosa is more ornamental.
It's not very tall, and it's very pink. It's got some hairy stuff inside, and that hairy stuff has an adhesive power.
We might need to look into that because Inothera odorata is yellow. So I'm thinking it might be a variable. I'm not out, like I don't know that situation. So most probably it is the one you say. I wouldn't recommend the speciosa, but we can look at the odorata because I'm not familiar with that issue. Yeah. If something like that happens, it's the kind of thing that you need to consider with the knowledge, the local, and avoid it.
Yeah, because people are not aware of these,
Exactly. And that's why we work with other specialties. We do work with ecologists.
Yeah.
Thankfully, the newer ecologists understand more these complexities. So I would definitely consult with an ecologist on that.
Yeah, this is a cultivar.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't go near that, yeah.
Well, it's about that meadow planting design, I guess.
Yeah, go on.
I know that most suppliers I've interacted with, they don't give this kind of scheme, că de fapt ăsta e un plan de plantare pentru pajiști, dar în mod normal pajiștile vin într-un amestec și nu poți tu să faci această schemă practic din fiecare specie de pajiște. Practic ai toate speciile.
I think I got that, yeah. I think.
La noi, da. La celor, da, e adevărat, dar au și niște amestecuri.
Da.
Pe care le poți.
She's saying that it's usually, but
You plant them.
for our country, we have already mixed seeds. We cannot choose.
That's what I'm saying, that the people that put those seed mix together just put seeds together regardless of how many, regardless of, well, they might consider the species, but they might not take into consideration the field establishment, and there might be, in the best of the cases, there would be an ecologist with a quadrant that would have gone in a wildflower meadow and would have said 80% is grasses, 20% is flowering species. So my mix from seed, regardless of how successful grass is versus wildflower seed, will be 80% grass, 20% seed. But grass seed is a lot more successful in establishing. So you need to start lower if you want to go at the 80-20, which is like a typical grass wildflower seed establishment. You need to start, I can't tell an exact percentage, but I would start with a 30, an indicative percent grass seed, and the rest wildflower meadow, because they are less successful, and grass is creeping, it's growing a lot more successful, you know. So this is the sort of knowledge and confidence that I would ideally like you to have, like wonder, oh, why do they have these seeds in here, you know. Also for the planting thing, if you were to plant, don't go to the 200, oh, I was touching the unit, 250, go to the 15 plants per square meter. Any landscape architects in our midst specifying 15 plants per square meter? No. If you go up to 8, you'll get your client be like, that's expensive, like what's going on? So we're talking about loads of plants per square meter at a fraction of the cost eventually, maybe. Shall we take a break?
Yeah.
Good.
Can we continue with questions?
Sure. But no break.
No break, okay. The idea is like this. In Romania, during July and August, we have a big problem with the dry season.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I have, like you show us the river, between two railways, two carways, I don't know how to
Yeah,
okay.
I understand what you're saying, yeah.
So I don't have the possibility to wet that.
Yes.
path. So when is it good for me to put the seed in the ground? How do I have to think my timing?
If you go with annuals,
Yeah, with annuals.
Thankfully, in Romania, it's not as bad as it is in Greece, where we've tested that.
Okay.
So you can start potentially soon as you've got no frost outside. That's the earliest you can start sowing annual seeds.
Meaning autumn?
No, springtime.
Spring,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
After.
March, end of March, whenever you expect
Okay.
that you might get a little bit of frost, but a little bit is fine. It's a case of, we're not going to get heavy frost. That's when you can start your annuals. And you should know that the end of your season will be only slightly extended, even with the North American species, in July, August. It's not going to work miracles, okay? But you need to know that, and you need to keep the expectations as they are. It's great habitat. There'll be seeds for birds, sorry, it vibrated. There is habitat for invertebrates, like butterflies and what have you. Appearance-wise, it will take a little bit or a lot of expectation management and cultivation. So once people understand that, okay, what I'm looking at now is brown, dead vegetation, but it's offering a hell of a good things to wildlife, and they care about their children, and they care about the future to the extent that they care, they will start seeing a little bit of beauty. The owl, their babies are the best, as we know. The myth. You don't. It's a fairy tale anyway with the swan. It doesn't matter. So if something you think is nice, even if it's ugly, it's nice to you. So yeah, good. Feeling rested? Let's try and answer the now what question. You've got your mix. How am I going to establish it successfully? Okay, and this is where we did the experiment. We want to find out how much seed we need to use per square meter. So we went for the full rate. You saw that little quantity we had on the corner. That's the full rate. But then we're like, hey, listen, we've designed it for 200 plants, but eventually we want to end up with 15 plants. What if we use the half rate and we throw all the percentages we've got of field establishment out of the window? We'll talk about why this is important. Seasonality is important. When do I sow it? Do I go out in the summer and throw the seeds, or do I do it in the winter? Do I do it in the autumn, spring? The two main seasons are spring and autumn. Irrigation, do I need to water it, or will it behave all right without me doing anything? Happy days. And the substrate that we talked about, do I need to use that additional layer of mulch, sand, compost, depends, and sow the seeds on top of it, or can I just spray off, or start without using it? And we tested these factors. We wanted an answer to these questions, so we used 2 seed mixes. It doesn't matter as much, it's just for the sake of showing how many plots we had on site. And each plot would have, let's say, the seed mix one at full rate, sown in spring, irrigated, mulched. Second plot would have the seed mix one with a half sowing rate, sown in spring, irrigated, mulched. And once you do the math, you essentially end up with 96 plots if you do 3 times each treatment. To have a statistically acceptable result, and you can claim eventually that, okay, I can use the outcome of this survey in practice. So far so good. They were 2 by 2 meter plots, okay? And the way we did it, so we sowed the seeds and we would start counting seedlings. Like when the seed germinates, it creates this seedling. So you have to know how to recognize the plant from seedling when it's only got 2 real leaves eventually. Real leaves, it's a term. And then following on these counts, we wanted to compare and see which one is best, because again, through comparison, we find out the results. We wanted to see if combining any of these 2 variables will make a lot of a difference, and that will make the successful establishment of wildflower meadows from seed better. And lastly, which is like a huge work, see if there are any specific species to species correlation. So far, like this is a very big field of research. The answer is we know nothing. One, we know nothing, as Socrates said. This is a typical plot. This is what an established plot will look like without any mulch in Spain, which is one of the regions we also tried these meadows. Not the most inspiring thing, as you can see. So this is what you would be looking at if you were to establish perennial wildflower meadows from seed for about a year. Clients don't really like that, but if you prepare them, if you know what to expect and you prepare your client, things are better. So this is a little bit of a duplication. The rate has an impact on the cost. Seeds are expensive, ridiculously expensive, and I'm surprised how Romania doesn't have like this a seed producing essentially company. Some species, I can't remember off the top of my head, we would buy for 8,000 pounds per kilo, for example. So most of the species would be in the range of 200 to 800 pounds per kilo. It's a lot of money. It can be an industry. It's not a known industry. There are many questions over there, but hopefully we can have a discussion after this presentation. So the rate has an impact on the cost. The seasonality, as most of you will know, is when do I do things? I need to do it correctly, I need to have the staff available, I need to get my seeds, so you have to plan things in, so it's good to know. Irrigation, you know the complication a lot better than I do. How do I water them? Do I establish, do I have a pipe running through, or do I have somebody coming with a tank to water where I've got? So it's not easy. Imagine being in the middle of a motorway. If you don't need to irrigate, thumbs up. But if you do, it's health and safety problem as well. How do you put a person next to the cars just to water flowers? You need to consider that. Additional cost of future-proofing, yeah. That's correct. Thank you. And then the substrate, yes, it helps us create those sterile conditions, but it's extra material. It's CO2 additional to move it there. And this is important nowadays because in a project we measure how much CO2 goes into what could create. Same with irrigation. Or do I just spray off? And just spray off is an overstatement because there are health and safety, again, issues with glyphosate or other chemicals that one might use to kill vegetation off. Okay. So that's a sprayed off, previously grass plot. It was done fairly quickly. That mulch broke our back. It's PAS 100 compost. It's a specification, so it's like weed-free compost that we used from green waste recycling. And what were the outcomes of all this complex trial? Like, we've spent hours on our knees, we've talked about family, we've talked about all the psychological problems with my colleagues, like counting seedlings. The best, the most clear outcome was relating to the sterile start. Hi. The mulched plots had by far a much larger, successfully establishing number of seedlings per square meter than the unmulched one. And that was clearly down to competition. Okay. With the question mark over there, that's like in year 1. I don't want to confuse you about it at this point, so I'll leave this there. Okay. But if we go down to specific species, like I'm about to turn the side, it's interesting to see how some species were performing differently. Like Achillea millefolium loved the mulched plots, although it's quite good at outcompeting other species. Geranium pratense didn't quite care as much. So that's what, when we're saying going down to species and knowing what species you add in your mix, how well they will behave per site. Okay. This is in the PDF on the site, so it should be less troublesome. A factor that didn't matter at all, unfortunately, during that experimental period was the difference between irrigation and non-irrigation. But this is me lying a little bit, because we are talking about Sheffield and we are talking about England, and the summer wasn't summer when we did these counts. So essentially, this year's result, you can throw it out of the window and say, yeah, it doesn't matter. Essentially, later years' results, so that if you sow in spring, you have to keep in mind that you need to irrigate. Not always, but you need to specify that if you've got more than 2 weeks of dry weather, you need to irrigate. So we need to be aware of these things. But this is quite funny, and funny anyway, in a bizarre, geeky way. Achillea millefolium. What is this? What is that? Again, really liked autumn sowing. Okay, so it's a bizarre one. While, where is it? Linaria vulgaris. Linaria vulgaris hated autumn sowing. And it's a really nice plant, Linaria vulgaris, but apparently it flowers quite early-ish in the season, drops the seed fairly early, and has a little bit of nice weather to grow before the winter hits. And if you see the seeds, they are like worse than dust, in a sense. They are black light, they fly everywhere, so they are very exposed to conditions, not like your primula, which is hard and small. So, playful things and funny things, you know, not nerdy at all, you know. As the slide says, preliminary outcomes. The plots that had the lower sowing rate didn't work as well. So the full rate is definitely something that we need to go for. So the establishment rates that James Hitchmo and Nigel Dunnett had estimated, they are working. Okay, so full sowing rate, we go for that. The long-term, though, effect of both the lack of mulch as well as the sowing rate is still something to be investigated by patient people, because eventually you might find out that plant by plant, even if they start at lower, much lower, statistically importantly lower numbers, they might eventually catch up. But in a commercial world, are we waiting for plants to catch up? So these are the sort of questions, again, that we need to answer ourselves. These are 2 links to the advice given by Pictorial Meadows on their website. It's slightly more simplified nowadays, but it's practical, hands-on, and these guys, you can just rig them up and they'll happily answer questions. Don't rig me like it. Autumn versus spring, so yeah, as you say, you saw species, it varies per species. I would feel more comfortable, what would I feel more comfortable with? Spring, I can control better. But if I had species like primula that requires cold temperatures to grow, I'd lean towards an autumn. So there is no black again or white. Work with what you've got in your hands. Apologies for not giving a very do this kind of answer. There is a lot of space for further observations. As we said, the seed industry is still quite undeveloped, and I've got some pictures I'll just share with yourselves from stereoscope, like looking at seeds close up. In a European Union context, we need to be aware of phytosanitary regulations. So although the exchange of seeds, plant seeds, is pretty open, pretty free, we just need to be aware that diseases might get carried from one side to the other. So when I was there, I tried to introduce like a quality control system, and that was part of it. And unlike agricultural seeds, wildflower seeds are not as strictly regulated. There are no standards as such. And we would find all sorts of, I don't want to say any ugly words now, let's say unwanted things in the seeds that you need to be aware of when you work with wildflower seeds. And I don't mean to scare you. I'm saying loads of scary things. Most of things are good. We've touched about competition. Yeah, the animals plots essentially had a lot of competition from grasses and from the existing seed bank that didn't allow our plants to develop the way we wanted it. But again, what will happen in 4 years, 5 years, 6 years down the line? It might have been something that we wouldn't be able to observe the time we're doing the experiment. But if somebody had the money and the patience to wait for a few more years and re-observe these things, they might have come up with slightly different result. This is all scientific. Practically, don't worry about these things. We talked about the successful establishment in spring sown and irrigated plots. Have I put this here? No. Where we had competition from other plants, we observed that, yeah, our plants were there, but they were eaten by slugs. So the competition was actually sheltering slugs, like slugs, and they would eat our nice, wanted, essentially, plants. Okay, so that's a secondary impact of existing competition. It's not just the roots or sunlight, it's also they provide shelter for slugs, and there are plenty of slugs in England. And then this is again being philosophical. What is going to be the climate change impact to plant communities? Like seasons changing or temperatures changing per region. So, food for thought. These would be like the kind of seedlings that we would be on our knees counting. These are mainly sedum and some Dianthus carthusianorum. Fantastic plant. I can recommend that. And these are my two friends, Panagiotis Parascou and Miguel Garcia Ovejero, with whom we did the researches in Greece and in Spain. With Greece, we had mediocre kind of success, but we didn't follow through because finances, anyway. You might have heard of that. Miguel Garcia Ovejero Miguel was kind of more lucky because he knew people in the public authorities, you know, and they gave him a very big stretch in one of the most prestigious parks in Madrid, the Valdebebas Park. It's next to, you know, footballers' apartments and these sort of things. And they worked for a shorter period of time, but they worked, so people would love them and they would wonder what these are. They were doing them again and again. And this is something that would essentially prompt you to like go wild in Romania and try yourself and see, do they work, do they not work? That's Valdebebas Park over there with Linaria Marocana. The rest of the photos are from Greece. This is like indoors, a green roof thing. That's the plots with a sedum mix, as I said. That's in a shady kind of situation. You see that's eaten over here by slugs. Shade, that's nice anyway. And this is what a nicely established perennial plot should look like. This is what one should aim to have by the end of year one, essentially. You know. Very little space in between, your plants are there, you know, it's green, and this is actually ready to start pushing flowers through and flower. Dream, this is like the dream, okay, it's possible. But if you were to do it from seed yourself, you realize that it's a work that requires knowledge, patience, managing clients, which is the worst part. And resources, you know. That's not the kind of thing you want to have. But more often than not, like even if I look outside the window, that's the situation we've got, okay? And we need to sort of expect that, to know what we need to do to move towards the dream situation. So we need to know our weeds. This is what I'm trying to say. You treat annual weeds differently. You treat perennial weeds differently. You would treat perennial weeds differently in a high profile area, like your main square or, you know, a house, or in a park that is somewhere in the side. Can anyone tell me if this plot is full of annual weeds? Knowing how annual plants work, what would be the best course of action? What would be the best way to treat it? Any guesses? Bindweed? Material. Oh, no. I'll tell you the story. Okay. I know you know it, but I'll reveal the secret. So annuals usually are quick ones. Okay, let's grow. Come on, the sunlight is out. Oof, we need to grow. So they grow quite fast. So the way to do it would be patient, wait for them to grow, and mow everything before they produce seeds. This should get rid of 80-90% of your weeds. And your perennials, like your plants that are underneath, will breathe, you know, and they'll start slowly growing here and there and establishing. And because the mow is usually done at about 10 centimeters, any seedling that is lower that is still alive. Okay, it's okay if you kill some. I mean, yeah, it's all right. If it's a perennial, though, infestation, Jesus, don't get me started on that. You would have to know your tools. Are you spraying? What are you spraying with? And this is like a tricky question, in all fairness, that we will answer later on. We'll take a break, not that kind of break, by looking at this picture, and I want to ask you, what do you see? What attracts your attention? The flower, the color. Has anyone noticed the nettle on the side?
Yes.
Yeah. But primarily, psychologically, like, oh, the color, the flower. As a landscape manager, you need to think what do my clients, which is like, if you're a public sector sort of person doing this thing, my voters, essentially. Do they see the flowers or do they see the nettle? And if the flowers are many more than the nettles, you can live with that for a little while, okay? But psychologically, you need to work with yourself when it comes to that. The bee is happy anyway. And as an example, I'm bringing this kind of plot which was full of weeds, but had also loads of flowers. And unfortunately, this plot had both annual and perennial weeds. And again, I lied about the annuals. There is one annual weed that I hate passionately. And unfortunately, it's everywhere over here. No. Gallium aparine. Does it ring a bell? Ah.
We like Gallium odoratum.
Odoratum, okay. Gallium verum, even better, but Gallium aparine.
Okay.
And that was full of Gallium aparine, full of nettles. So with Gallium aparine, although annual, it's very satisfying if you just pull it out like that. And unfortunately, that's one way of doing this. Oh, Gallium aparine, have we found Gallium aparine?
Here?
Yeah. We will see it, like, once we are done with this, we'll go outside and we'll pull it out. So we've cut this plot several times. When the plants grew, that's what I'm saying, Gallium aparine, we will see it outside. Oh, was it a strong word, hate? This is tricky, so I'm getting into very nitty-gritty kind of maintenance of these things. And I promise you there is a solution after that you won't have to remember any of what I've told you today. So stick with me. When that grew, oh, so when that grew, we had to spray. But if we sprayed off with a herbicide that would kill everything, we would kill everything. So we will have to do spot treatment. It's more labor intensive, so it requires more time, but it promises better results in a sense. So we cut it back, I mean, down to almost ground level, and that's the point that you can see the little plants starting to regrow. And you know that, okay, this is my nettle, spray just this little bit. Oh, that's my other nettle, let's spray that. You might kill some other plants in the process, but 215 plants, 15 plants per square meter, as we said, the dynamics are there, so the gaps will be filled in.
I have a question here. Do you know about the technique of using industrial burn? It's like
burning.
Warming. No, not burning. Warming.
Yes, it boils essentially. Yeah. Another technique that if you have in your palette of tools, use it. The only thing that now I'm transferring James Hitchmold words, be aware of your environmental impact coin. Like, how do you measure your environmental impact? Is it CO2 footprint? How much energy do you consume to heat up? But then again, how much embedded CO2 footprint is in the chemicals? So I don't have the answer to this. But by all means, this is what they do use in Scandinavia. They also use vinegar, but that's a contact herbicide. It would kill only what it touches, which means that a perennial weed will regrow. Okay, while I'll say the G word, glyphosate, which is being banned, not being banned. I'm not recommending it, I'm just saying what's been used, will get absorbed by the leaf and will kill eventually the root. Okay, so it fully gets rid of the plant. But know what you've got in your tool palette, in your tools around you. By all means, I have a burner at home. I put paraffin in it and I burn the plants. My neighbor thinks I'm crazy, but they're still talking to you.
Yeah, in Greece it's kind of
I mean,
to do that.
I didn't do that. And eventually, again, there are weeds in there, but the flowers and the color is a lot more than your weeds. So it's acceptable. That's what we need to create. Happy so far? That was like kind of intense, and I expect questions.
So question, are the weeds going to disappear in time?
If we keep understanding what are the weeds and then go and spray it again, yes. The persistent weeds like nettles, nettles, we know nettles, okay. Creeping thistle, I don't expect you to know that. What's the scientific? I'll show you, we might find it outside. Oh, I've got a picture of it actually. Shall I go to the picture first, or anyway, let's talk about the weed. Cirsium arvense, that's the one, yes, thank you. Fantastic. See. What was it? Ursuline. Now you know. Creeping thistle. Ursuline. They will persist, so you need to spray them again. But there are specific herbicides for these plants. And you can escape glyphosate. Especially if you've got grasses in them, grasses can be quite slowly expanding, taking over. There are specific herbicides for grasses, the graminicide. So know your tools, know your palette, know what you can use. Avoid disappointment. So when you do wildflower meadows, as we've discussed, there's going to be disappointment if you don't know what to expect. And client expectations are the worst. Know what stuff you've got in hand and what their knowledge is, because more often than not, unfortunately, in our industry, it's like I can't do anything else and I'll do that. At least in England, it's like I can push a mower. Okay, it's not a skilled job, but there is a lot of opportunity for skill development. So know what skills your staff have got. Know the weather conditions and know your site conditions, like of where you're going to do those things. And of course, the lack of knowledge and the lack of communication between members of staff, client, if that's not there, it's guaranteed disappointment. So, happy news, you don't have to do those things from seed. Because if you want, that can be developed as turf. Okay. So you can just roll it out. Okay, so you buy it ready, you place it on your prepared area, and what's the magic thing about it? From zero, you go to something green, and within less than a month, depending on the season, your client will see flowers, or even straight away, some Bellis perennis or what have you might already be there.
Can we ask what are the prices for this flowers?
So it's not all flowery, because that is, I'll give an indicative price, was at about £25 per square meter. But we are talking hundreds of plants per square meter. So it depends which way you see it. If you were to plant every single plant as plug, even like the very small, it'd be within the hundreds of pounds, okay? You wouldn't do this practically, but it's the actual value. But that, much as I would have liked you to go out and know everything when it comes to conditions and what factors you can control and sow wildflower meadows from seed, that is so easy that even the fact that you won't have to deal with client expectations, it's a winner in my books. So yeah, that's expensive. You need the budget from the beginning, but it doesn't require the supervision, the knowledge, the stress, the weeding, like it's already there. But I would very much like you to be able to do the weeding, you know, and know your plants. And the picture, so this is Green Estate, the community interest company that I used to work for, putting in an embankment, okay? Straight away stabilization over there, okay? And the one next door is a tractor-mounted arm flail to keep the verges clean, yeah. Powerful tool. I've managed to break one, it's okay. We've talked about the legislation. You have to be aware of that because some of the herbicides might move out and then steam might be the thing to use. Some people, in large schemes, you can't really go and sow by hand. Okay, you normally sort of put in a bucket sand, throw the seeds in, and start throwing the seeds on your site. You go that way, then you go that way. You try to different ways. Most of the people do the mistake and they use grass seeding machines for large schemes. That's they find out is a mistake because grass machinery depends on gravity and it's got gaps. And unfortunately, grass seed is not the same size as wildflower seed. And you eventually end up with a fantastic, very dense meadow here, and you get the rest hundreds of meters with nothing. So specialty machinery needs to be used if you were to use machinery. Okay? There was this lady, Alexandra, earlier on that we were actually saying that. She was promoting machinery. Know your budget. If you've got plenty of money from start, turf. If you don't have the budget from start, your fight is going to be knowing your plants and managing expectations, knowing your herbicides, blah, blah, blah. If you want to have an impact, don't go for anything smaller than 2 meter wide strip. You'll see why. It looks odd. Always put the safety of your members of staff first. So no matter how the river of flowers might look wherever, if it will require somebody to walk there to cross traffic, don't expose them like to this sort of danger unnecessarily, you know. Or if you put it on a slope and you expect somebody to go there with a push mow, it's almost a sprain waiting to happen, you know, an accident. And know your machinery, know what. You've got a streamer, you've got a tractor with a flail, what have you got? That's an annual meadow in the University of Sheffield. That's a nice old building. They use it for nothing. They use it for, of course, very important operations. So annuals are quick and easy. If you want to win your clients, start with an annual wildflower meadow. You know, spray off the grass, sow your seeds in spring as soon as there is no frost around. Within a month, the things will start sprouting, the seeds. You won't get flowers within a month. I had clients ringing me I sowed and there are no flowers. When did you sow? Last week. What do you expect me to do? Like, and within, yeah, this is what happens. And that's like a more whitish mix. Not my favorite, but it looks nice anyway. I think the river of flowers is nicer. Patience is important because things grow slowly. You cannot see it over here. You might be able to see it on your PDFs. But you see that little bit over there, it's wet. Okay. Seeds don't like wet conditions. They will rot, they will die. Okay. And that I was really stressed at that point. I'm thinking, oh, everything's going to die here. But I needed to be patient because eventually, yeah, it wasn't as dense to the beginning, but we are throwing thousands of seeds in there. Okay, so some of them survive, and it might have not been the spectacularly dense meadow eventually, but it was there. There was color. It was acceptable, as we said, for the people that were looking at it. And this is just me showing the tractor rotovating this area. Patience. This is clearer. This is how small the seedlings are. The untrained eye cannot really see anything. Okay, and if you are not trained to the plants, you'll think that it's weeds. So I can tell you a trick downstairs when we go when this finishes. 2 meter strip. This is why you avoid it. Like I'm not quite sure what they were trying to do there, but the university was using the 2 meter ride-on mower. So they would cut this side, they would cut this side, they would cut this side, and they would be left with that for what purpose? I don't know. You could just go over it. It's nothing. It's odd. It's bizarre. But if they had the 60 centimeter wide mower, you know, that would be neat. That would be wider. It would have a different kind of, you know, feel to it. Don't trust contractors. They will just put whatever unwanted things they want. They think it's storage, so you need to tell them that, no, this is important. This is like, needs to be protected. At least they only ruined the corner over there, you know. That's your Cirsium arvense. That's Cirsium arvense over there. The creeping thistle, Ursulina. Julie. Julie. That sounds dirty in Greek. So this is a plot full of that. There is a third herbicide called Thislex that you can spray over it, and it just targets thistles. But thistle, that creeping thistle, Julie, is a plant that loves cultivated soil. So the rhizomes break, pops up. So you might look devastating to start with. Patience. If you cut it again and again, it will eventually be reduced. It's again balance of expectations, time that you've got in your hand, machinery. Annual meadows, again, we said we are throwing thousands of seeds in. This was not looking great in year one. We had loads of grasses popping through. So we're like, it's not acceptable for us. We will cut it. So we cut half of it, okay? And things started flowering again, or at least continued. The ones that were starting to grow, continued to grow and they flowered. So cutting is a magical tool. Don't hesitate to cut. You see what it looked like next door. It was kind of too weedy, you know, too brownish for our liking. Does it make sense, like the comparison between the two? And another disaster avoiding technique, cutting again. If something doesn't look perfect to your liking, okay, the moment you will cut things around it and highlight it, it's as if you tell them, this is intentional. You know, we want this to be here. It's a very psychological tool, this one. So people start thinking, okay, it must be important. It might not look its best, but it buys you time as such. So that's what we've been trying to do here. I might have a picture. Oh, no, I don't have a picture of it. It wasn't looking as bad. Don't listen to me. It was better than I make it sound. Again, patience. This was a very shady area, and it was very slow compared to the area behind it. Like you see that where the sun was hitting it, and the PDF will be clear, it was growing more fast, while around the tree, it was not growing as fast. So patience was, again, in our favor, and it looked acceptable for the conditions anyway. We wouldn't expect in shady conditions or in very poor soil conditions the wildflower meadow to grow tall. It would have different forms. They will grow much smaller, but they will grow. It's always question time, but now it's officially question time. You'll be pleased to hear. Again, apologies for overwhelming you potentially with information. I've left some things out, and we'll see a few more things when we go outside if you are patient enough to just follow me to a couple of locations. This is a photo I've taken from northern Greece. We could potentially be putting seed mixes together with native Greek species, for example, you know. Or Nautia macedonica, one of my favorite plants, native to Romania as well. Go wild with it, like use it everywhere. Yeah, questions? That was a presentation. First of all, I see everybody's awake. Needs to be as poor as possible. It's again a matter of expectations. The best you can do is have as poor soil, especially for perennials, as possible, but you will need to be a little bit patient with that. It reduces competition, it doesn't allow grasses to grow as wild, and you will end up with a more biodiverse community.
When you put just compost,
Uh-huh.
sand, like this planting bed, it is not very fertile.
It is not, and depends on the mix. If you look up the sustainable drainage system grey to green in Sheffield, in order to establish the plants, but at the same time fight competition, they came up with a mix that was between 70 to 80% sand, and the rest of it was green waste compost, the one we used for mulching, and I'm not quite sure if they had some topsoil as well in there. Potentially no. So it was quite poor. Okay.
Can we restore very degraded soils by adding this, by adding the seed mix and some topsoil?
What do you mean by saying very degraded? Is it polluted? Is it compacted?
Only very dry and erodes.
So you would have to work with the conditions. A good indicator would be to go and see what plants might already be growing there. Okay, if nothing grows and you've got plenty of plants around it, then there's something genuinely wrong with that bit of soil. Okay, might be heavy metals, not the music, like.
Very compacted soil by people walking.
If it's compacted, we've got now the machinery to. Yeah. So these are the sort of questions that you need to ask. Yes, you will find out that especially the annuals is a cheap and quick and easy way to test your site. If unsure, take a cheap and cheerful mix, throw it with a little bit of preparation on your site and see how it grows. You might get very small plants. You might get nothing. So I'd recommend that as a starter because perennials are more expensive.
I was wondering if you do any soil samples before deciding on the most suitable seed mix in your project, or if you recommend soil samples. And the other question was if you have tried also mixing annuals with perennials to have this effect of having flowers very quickly, while the perennials would then take over and ensure the more permanent effect.
Yes and yes. So definitely recommend soil samples, but not always. You would normally specify you would tell the people that will do the planting what kind of soil you want it to be. Okay, if you cannot change the soil, you only need to change like the top 10 centimeters, then it's always good to test it. If you do not test it, see what grows already there. If things grow, it's fairly safe to say that these mixes or your mixes that you'll design will grow. Does this cover the first part of the question?
Yeah.
On the second part, mixing annuals with perennials, yes. Is it recommended though? I think this goes with two questions that we've had outside, and the sheltering of predators, as in slugs. If you put a plant, an annual plant that will grow quickly, and you will get shelter then for your slugs, then preferably not. But we've done it, and it's worked. And then you need to be aware of the competition they might have. Okay, and you might need to be aware that in year 2, there might be a few more gaps in between your perennial plants. So it's mindfulness, it's knowledge, knowing what to expect, essentially.
Cât de grea este întreținerea de mentenanță? Adică pe o perioadă de un an de zile, să zicem, facem plantarea și pe o perioadă de un an de zile o să mai dai clar prin această bogățică pe care o plantăm. Cum se procedează în acest caz?
It depends on the site. If you stand sterile, I think I understood the question correctly, that how many times you need to go and cut maybe and spot spray. You need to know the critical times. When you sow and things start to germinate within, say, a month, potentially, you will visit in a month. If you've had rain and the temperature was nice and you see nothing, what's going on here? Okay.
What do you do then?
Go on. You go at night and you saw it. Thankfully, we have not had this. Like, that's what I'm saying with patience. See, I'm sweating already. Like that. Patience. I've never had one site that nothing grew. Okay. If the rate was not to the extent that we wanted it, it must have been the case of compacted soil or wetness, and it took more time. Now, once you go and things grow and you see that you've got weeds, you need to identify what kind of weeds. And by weed is anything that you do not want, or not the agricultural weeds, the weeds that shouldn't be there. You will, yeah. There might be weeds like the pictures that I've sent you. There might be weeds inside your seeds, so know that. Usually, they are either annuals, so you cut them when your perennials grow and you're done with them, If you see perennials, they are usually existing already. So you will see much bigger leaves, okay? And that's where you can go spray them or pull them or treat them any way you want. So knowing how plants work and what to expect at what time is key. So knowledge and knowing your plants. If then you go in 3 months' time, okay, when things are growing and you see, oh, a nettle, I've missed the nettle over there, you will at least see the nettle. You won't just see a full plot being covered in. Oh, it might be. Is it working well? So in year 1, I would go twice maybe, but I know the plants, so I can identify the plants at the beginning, and I'll go in the middle of the season or towards the end to see what survived.
Oh, it's just a little bit because something is happening with the sound.
It's me, of course.
So you say the middle of the season is August?
August, yeah. August is a good season. If you, depends, if you see that everything is working at the beginning, you can leave it for later. But you understand how knowledge, knowing your plants, knowing the life cycle, so the competition works and helps you. The turf. The turf.
Next to the meadows. The white one. Do you leave space between that in order not to destroy it?
Space between the turf.
So let's say that it's something big.
Ah, okay, so you have like that, the path, let's say, the grass verge, and then you've got your...
If you leave any distance.
Ideally not. If I get it correctly, let me go back to, how back should I go? Let's go back. We've covered a lot today, yeah, well done to yourselves.
Okay.
That, yeah?
Aici nu e gazon, că avem alee, dar dacă ar fi fost gazon și în partea cealaltă s-ar fi lăsat tot o suprafață ca să nu intre în pajiște.
So there's no turf there, if it's an alley, but if there were turf, should we leave space between the turf and middle?
So for the grass,
What's the, it's the middle part that I don't understand. What's the middle part?
Middle.
Oh, the, okay.
So if this is a turf, what we will do here? We'll leave a space.
or
She
not.
wants to know if you leave space between gazon the turf.
Zona de...
Yeah, and then this meadow.
And yes,
Bine for spațiu, că aleile se water.
So,
for the grass not to go into the middle.
oh, it will eventually, the only way to stop it, I wouldn't. I would leave them side by side. But usually, when nowadays I specify wildflower meadows like that in a location that gets cut, I use the same mix here and here. So, and there. So it would have species that flower as well as grass. Now, one situation, okay. So the part that I want to be biodiverse, help with habitats, etc., I'll leave it grow. And then depending on whether I've got a push mower or a ride-on mower, I just tell my staff, yeah, go at the edge and only cut one strip, So that's one situation. Over here, it's grass and annual wildflower meadow. I wouldn't leave anything because that's changing every year. It's bare and done again. If I had grass and perennial, I would still leave no gap. But I would be mindful of how the grasses creep in my meadow and just keep an eye on them. I don't mind a little bit of that. I might increase slightly the mowed area, like the area that I can. So.
But what if we have a pattern?
A what? A pattern?
Yes.
How strict are you on your pattern? Because what we are talking about differential mowing. So imagine all of that being the same meadow, okay? And my pattern is like this wave. I tell my member of staff, you know, I want you to do this.
Yes, but if you don't have a limit between dacă noi separăm între zona circulabilă pe care tu o vrei circulabilă și zona care tot timpul să fie lăsată flowering.
A limit, it's a battle that the few days that I've been in Bucharest, I'm struggling a bit. I understand where you're coming from. Greek landscape architecture is very much influenced by France. You've got your parterre, you've got your like little railing, and everything needs to be, you don't walk over there, there needs to be a limit. This is more organic, it's more psychological. You have to accept that it won't be down to the millimeter of what you plan.
We just have like 20 minutes if you want to go down. Now is the time.
So now we're having break. We're having
no
a break.
Directly after.
Oh, we don't have a break, no break.
We said that we will finish at 4 o'clock. Some people will leave at 4 o'clock.
Okay, so quick to the downstairs.